I'm Mary. While I was working in my upstairs room, I suddenly heard a noise from the living room downstairs. Could it be a burglar? Ready to call for help at any moment, I gripped my cell phone and went to check the living room. There, I found my sister-in-law Jennifer. Jennifer? Oh, Mary, you're here. Jennifer turned around at the sound of my voice. You scared me, sneaking in like that. Huh? This is William's family home. So, it's practically my home too. William is the name of my brother. Setting that aside, I kind of understood what Jennifer was trying to say. But still, isn't it rude to enter someone's house without permission? I couldn't help feeling irked. But Jennifer seemed displeased with my reaction. Approaching me, she said, "Instead of that, you're home again today? Well," sigh, "having someone like you as a sister-in-law is really the worst." Excuse me? What do you mean by that? Are you still clueless? I'm saying it's embarrassing to be single and unemployed. Jennifer spoke to me in a mocking tone. I couldn't deny being single, but the unemployment part was a misunderstanding on her part. I do work, even if it's from home. So I quickly retorted, "I am working." But Jennifer didn't believe me. Instead, she mocked me further. Yeah, a home security guard, right? That's not it. Whatever. It's embarrassing and a nuisance, so just leave. I had no choice but to stay silent. I remembered that Jennifer had always been this way since our first meeting. It was years ago when Jennifer first came into our lives. William had brought her home, introducing her as the person he wanted to marry. I didn't intend to meet Jennifer then. Not because I opposed the marriage, but simply because I was a recluse. This began in high school, due to my inability to gauge social distances. Making friends was difficult. This led to me becoming increasingly withdrawn from school and eventually becoming a recluse. But neither my parents nor William blamed me. "It's okay if you don't want to go to school," my dad Robert would say. "Maybe you'll find what you want to do if you take your time." William encouraged me, and my mom Ashley silently supported me. Thanks to them, I could deeply consider my future. I can't go outside, but maybe there's something I can do from my room. With that, I decided to see what I could do with a computer. In this era, as long as you have an internet connection, anything is possible. There are ways to work other than going to an office. I'll start with what I can do alone. After that, I began to explore various possibilities. But with little knowledge or skill, there wasn't much I could do. I feel like I can't do anything. It was during such a low moment that William came to me with an idea. "Mary, you play games, right?" "Games? A little, I guess." "How about trying to be a game tester?" William brought me a job opportunity as a game tester. The task was to check whether pre-release games worked properly. It didn't require any special skills. All it needed was motivation and perseverance. "I'd like to try that," I answered immediately. And so, I began working as a tester. This job suited me perfectly. I could work diligently on my own. Reporting was as simple as sending emails. Even for someone like me who struggled with social interaction, this was manageable. I immersed myself in the tester job. As I worked, I realized something. If I knew more about programming, maybe I could even suggest fixes. That's how I started to get interested in programming. But programming requires a lot of learning. Usually, people study it at IT vocational schools. However, it's not necessary to attend such schools. There are online courses, and you can also study independently. It's all about having the will, isn't it? I used the internet to its fullest to start learning programming. I explored various sites, accumulating the necessary knowledge. Whenever I didn't understand something, I'd ask someone online. And someone I didn't even know would kindly respond. Someone is responding to my voice. That made me happy. Gradually, I found friends who were also studying programming. We interacted online, and I started sharing personal things. Initially, our interaction was just through text, but it eventually led to voice calls, and finally, meeting in person. I was nervous, of course. Memories of my bitter high school days resurfaced. But I was no longer the high school me. Dressed up a bit, I went to the meeting place, where several men and women of my age were present. I timidly approached them, but we hit it off quickly. It was no different from our online interactions. The only difference was whether they were behind a screen or in front of me. Feeling reassured, I got lost in conversation. Then, someone suggested, "Let's start a business." I was anxious, but I thought I could work if it was with these people. I agreed immediately. That's how I started a company with friends I met online. Some had experience in sales, others had worked in regular companies. With such a diverse group, we faced no major issues in starting our business. "Mary, just do what you can," they told me, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I committed to giving my best in what I could do. And then, a month later, I received my first paycheck. It was totally different from the earnings I got as a tester. It was my first salary as a full-time employee. For someone who had given up in high school, this was a huge deal. Now, I'm like everyone else. Until now, I had lived in a world isolated from society. But this made me feel like a part of the community. Afterwards, I thanked my parents and William with my first salary. A token of gratitude for not giving up on me when I became a recluse. My parents were happy, and so was William. Their smiles motivated me to work even harder. The company grew rapidly, and my salary increased significantly. However, I didn't have much to spend it on. Most of my work was from home, so I didn't need things like suits for commuting. The only place I'd occasionally go was the nearby grocery store. Since my work was almost like a hobby, I had virtually no use for money. "Mom, what should I do? Should I just save it?" "Well, saving is good, but sometimes it's okay to spend boldly." After much thought, I decided to buy something significant. A house. My workplace is my room. It needs to be a place where I can relax and concentrate on work. In an apartment, you have to be mindful of neighbors. So, a detached house seemed like a better option. "I'll buy a house with land." It was quite a bold idea, even for me. But at that time, I didn't think too deeply about it. So, I bought a detached house with land. Robert and William were surprised, but they're not the kind of people to oppose what I do. They accepted it graciously. Only Mom seemed worried. I shouldn't have said anything. Mom regretted her words. "It's okay. I wanted to buy it." "Really? If that's the case, then it's fine." Mom's regret might not be completely gone, but that changed instantly when we moved in. "This kitchen is so user-friendly." Ashley was overjoyed with the state-of-the-art kitchen. That moment I felt glad I bought the house. Robert also expressed his satisfaction. "It's close to the company, and having a parking space is convenient." William spoke to me earnestly. "I'm proud to see Mary all grown up." "It's because you introduced me to the tester job." "But without your efforts, this wouldn't have happened. You're amazing, Mary." "Thank you. I owe so much to William." That's why when I heard about William's fiancée coming, I decided not to meet her. I thought it'd be better to pretend I didn't exist, so William wouldn't be judged because of me. But William thought differently. "Mary is my proud sister. I want you to greet the woman who's going to be your sister-in-law." "Okay," I stand. With William's words, I couldn't refuse. So, I decided to meet Jennifer. "Nice to meet you. I'm Jennifer." My first impression of Jennifer was that she liked brands. Apparently, she worked at a bank, and her clothes and accessories were all branded. Even her perfume was from a top brand. However, she spoke elegantly and seemed considerate. My parents quickly took a liking to her. Thus, the family meeting went smoothly. "Well, I have work to do," I said, trying to leave early. I thought it would be fine for the rest to enjoy a meal together, my parents, William, and Jennifer. That's what I thought. My parents and William didn't try to stop me, but Jennifer was different. As I was about to leave, Jennifer stopped me. Hey, why don't we exchange contact information? We're going to be sisters-in-law, after all. But... Come on, let's get going, Jennifer said cheerfully. For some reason, her smile sent chills down my spine. I had a bad feeling about her, but I couldn't refuse in that atmosphere. Okay, I'll go get my cell phone. I just wanted to get it over with quickly. I could always brush her off if she contacted me. Thinking this, I went to get my cell phone. Jennifer then smirked unpleasantly. Since we're here, let's go together. Show me your room, will you? Okay. I took Jennifer to my room. Looking into my room, Jennifer said. So, this is your room. You're a recluse here, aren't you? A recluse? Yes. Just staying in your room, unemployed. Isn't that right? I instinctively braced myself against such a spiteful person. Then, laughing, Jennifer said, What? You're on guard against me. Did you hate being called unemployed that much? Of course. I'm not unemployed. Home-based work isn't a real job. You can't make a living that way. I can. Yeah, as long as someone supports you. Supporting me? Thinking you're a full-fledged adult with just a small income? Don't make me laugh. How much I earn is none of your business. It matters to me. Married, unemployed sister-in-law is embarrassing. I am single, but I'm not unemployed. Oh right, you do home-based work. Sorry, I'm forgetful. She was completely looking down on me. Jennifer didn't seem to consider remote work as a real job. It was clear she just wanted to tease me and be alone with me. That's all I understand. I glared at Jennifer, visibly annoyed. Looking at me like that won't change the reality. If you're upset, find a real job. I am working. You're such an annoying child. If you weren't here, I could have lived in this house. Jennifer's spiteful words were unbearable. She could visit, but she couldn't force me out. Because this is my house. Yet, unaware of this, Jennifer frequently came over and whispered to me to leave when my parents and William weren't around. It was intolerable. Can't she just stop? I grumbled to myself. And today, it finally happened. Jennifer silently entered the house and outright told me to leave. That was the last straw for me. I won't leave. And don't enter the house without permission. What? An unemployed person telling me off? I'm not calling you a nuisance. I'm saying what you're doing is unreasonable. Shut up. Be quiet for once. Jennifer headed upstairs. I hurried after her and found her in my room. What are you doing? This is my room. I yelled, but Jennifer ignored me. Looking around my room, she said, This is perfect. There's a computer and it's spacious. Better suited for me than you. This is perfect. There's a computer and it's spacious. Better suited for me than you. Get out of my room. Shut up, unemployed. You don't deserve it, so I'll take it. What? No way. Get out. Somehow, I managed to push Jennifer out of my room. Then, I forcibly dragged her out of the house. I was surprised by my own strength. Thinking it was like playing with fire, I quickly called William. Despite being at work, William answered. What's up, Mary? Did something happen? William, actually. I explained how Jennifer had entered the house on her own, and also told him about how she had been demeaning me all this time. William was furious. What? To my dear sister. I can't forgive this. Okay, I'll talk to her. Thanks, William. After thanking him, I hung up. But I can't always rely on William. Pondering, I decided to call my colleague, James. James was a bit older than me. A college graduate, he used to work at a general company. He joined our startup wanting to do IT work. With his extensive experience, I made it a point to consult James when in trouble. James, it's not about work. I have a personal issue. What's wrong? Well, I discussed Jennifer's actions with James. Angry as if it were his own issue, James said, "That's wrong of Jennifer. You're not at fault, Mary." "Right, yeah. So, have you figured out any countermeasures?" "That's just it. I haven't at all." "Then, I'll tell you a good strategy. It's this." James shared a certain plan with me. Indeed, an interesting strategy. If successful, it would surely teach Jennifer a lesson. But there was one problem. "Won't this trouble you, James?" "Don't worry about me. Just go ahead and try it." "Thank you." I decided to execute James's plan. Immediately, I contacted a certain place. Months passed while I implemented the countermeasures. Jennifer's attacks on me ceased, probably due to William's scolding. I hope it stays this way. I was slightly relieved. However, the world isn't always so kind. A few days later, Jennifer called me. "Can I come over tomorrow? It's okay if I call before coming, right?" Her tone was deliberately unpleasant. Still, if Jennifer came, there was a high chance of executing James's plan. Reluctantly, I pretended to agree. The next day, Jennifer arrived at the house and immediately asked, "Are your parents here?" "They're not. They're on a trip." "Oh, that's perfect." While saying so, Jennifer brought a large bag into the house. "What is that?" "My clothes and various things." "Are you planning to stay here?" "Not just staying. I'm moving in. So, you should leave. You're an eyesore." It finally happened. With that in mind, I quietly nodded. "Understood." "You're complaining." "Wait, you understand?" "Yes." "I'll leave." "You suddenly became obedient." "I've thought about it. You are William's wife. I owe a lot to William." I said this with a solemn demeanor. Jennifer then started to smile unpleasantly. "Finally, you understand. Now, get out. Useless unemployed." "Okay." I immediately went upstairs. Actually, as per James's instructions, my belongings were already packed, and I had a place to move to. In other words, everything was going according to James's plan. I called the moving company and went to the living room, where Jennifer was relaxing on the sofa. "You're fast." "Well, a reclusive unemployed wouldn't have much to move, I guess." Although I wanted to retort, I didn't. "I'm leaving now. The movers will come later for my things." Yeah. And please don't regret this." "Regret? As if. I'll feel refreshed without a recluse around." Leaving Jennifer's mocking laughter behind, I left the house. Then I contacted my parents. "Dad, are you enjoying the trip?" "Yeah, I'm really happy with this present." "I'm glad." Actually, I told them about Jennifer's visit to the house. I explained the reason for the sudden trip and James's strategy, and I asked them to act accordingly. My parents agreed readily, largely due to the description of Jennifer's unreasonable behavior. "This will work out well. She'll regret it." Muttering to myself, I headed to my new home. A few days after moving, the end of the month was approaching, and I was excited. "Any time now. Jennifer should contact me." I waited for the call. Then it came. The phone rang, and as soon as I answered, Jennifer yelled, "What's the meaning of this?" "What's wrong, Jennifer? Why do I have to leave?" "You don't have to leave. Just pay the rent." "Rent? This house is our family home, isn't it?" "It was, but I've sold it." "You sold it? Why do you get to decide that?" "Because it was my house." "Your house?" "Yes, that house was." I explained about starting an IT company with my colleagues and working there. William must have told her too. But since Jennifer looked down on me, I assumed she hadn't listened. So, I explained it all from the beginning. Shocked, Jennifer asked, "So, you really sold this house?" "Yes." "Are you familiar with leaseback?" "What's that?" Leaseback is a system where you sell your home to a company and then rent it to continue living there. It has benefits like paying off loans with the sale proceeds. I used that lease back. I sold the house and land I bought, then stopped paying rent after the contract ended when Jennifer arrived. That meant Jennifer couldn't continue living there unless she signed a new contract herself. But Jennifer, who relied on William, wouldn't be able to pay the rent herself. And I doubted she would want to live there with William after driving me out. In short, Jennifer would have nowhere to live.
Remember this after playing your games.
I couldn't help but laugh at her empty threat. It was entirely her fault. If she hadn't looked down on me, she could have had a happy married life. Such a pointless person. She'll probably end up divorced from William, and I won't have to see her again. That's what I thought. But it was that evening when James called me.
Mary, something terrible happened. Can you contact your brother right away?
He should be finishing work soon, so I can.
Then tell him, and also.
James spoke rapidly about various things. Essentially, he wanted me and William to come to his house. Curious, I contacted William and then headed to James's place first. When I arrived, there was a commotion outside James's apartment. Many police officers were there, and neighbors had gathered to see what was happening.
James, what happened?
I approached James, who was in the middle of the commotion.
Actually, some weird woman tried to take my laptop.
Here's what James told me. While he was taking a shower during a break at work, he heard a strange noise and peeked into his room. There, a woman was rummaging through his belongings, apparently trying to take his laptop. Of course, James immediately confronted her. As soon as he shouted, the woman got startled and ran away. But she tried to escape through a window, fell, and lost consciousness. That woman was Jennifer, and she was arrested by the police for breaking and entering. However, Jennifer insisted,
"This is my sister's room,"
and wouldn't back down, causing the commotion.
"This isn't your room, right?"
The police asked. Of course, it wasn't my room, but I wondered why Jennifer thought it was my room. When I asked her, Jennifer said to me,
"It's your room. I sent your belongings here." "My belongings?" "Yes, I heard it from the movers."
When Jennifer was at the house, I had called the movers and left her there. But, as per James's instructions, my belongings were first sent to his room, then forwarded to my new home. Unaware of this, Jennifer assumed the delivery address was where I moved to.
But that doesn't justify breaking and entering, does it? It's your fault. You.
Jennifer's excuse was this. When I left the house, I had all furniture and appliances taken by the movers. However, Jennifer apparently thought something would be left behind. Her plan was to sell the leftovers and use the money for living expenses. But that plan failed. She thought she could still manage if the house was there. But then she learned she couldn't live there anymore. In retaliation, she planned to sell my laptop for cash. She intended to enter my house, but ended up in James's room instead. That was the real story.
It's your fault. Remember this.
As the police took her away, Jennifer continued to shout such things. In the end, Jennifer and William got divorced. William demanded compensation from Jennifer. However, there was no way Jennifer could pay it, because she had debts. She wanted to take over our house to sell its contents for money to pay off her debts. Anyway, Jennifer is now in prison, unable to do anything. And her parents ended up paying the compensation on her behalf. Because of Jennifer's incident, I've come to rely on James more than ever. I might not have been able to do anything without him. That's when I realized something. I'm in love with James. Now that I've realized this, I've started to make strong advances towards James.
This time, give the baby to your brother. You can just have another one.
After I announced my pregnancy to my parents, my mother uttered those unbelievable words. Brother Zach and his wife Rosie, who is infertile, demanded that I give up my child for adoption to them. My parents have always prioritized Zach over everything and neglected me. The hopeful future I had envisioned upon conceiving my first child turned into despair. My name is Olivia. I've been married to my husband Walt for 3 years. Our marriage is great, and we've been talking like we want a child soon. However, I've kept some distance from my family home. The reason lies with my parents and my brother Zach. At the family home, my parents, Zach, and his wife Rosie live together. Zach was a prodigy since childhood and graduated from a prestigious university. He now secured a job at a major corporation. He is set to join and eventually take over our father's company. Our parents have adored him since he was young. In comparison, I wasn't very smart and had average looks, so I don't have many memories of being cherished by our parents. From a young age, I was always confused by the difference in treatment between Zach and me, often feeling down alone. Especially our mother, she was always with him, clearly showing he was her favorite. As for me, she mostly ignored me. When she did talk, it was usually to put me down. Perhaps influenced by our parents, Zach looked down on me too, so we never had a good sibling relationship. I felt I had no place at home and grew increasingly isolated. For those reasons, as soon as I graduated high school, I left home. My parents, seemingly uninterested in me, didn't say much when I announced my departure. In fact, they seemed almost pleased. After leaving, I got a job. And 3 years later, I married Walt, who was a classmate from high school. I was eager to build my own family and find my peace, away from the influence of my family. I only return home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'd rather not go, but my parents insist. They worry about appearances, and a daughter who never visits would look bad. They make a fuss if I don't go, so I endure it and visit twice a year. I went back grudgingly this Thanksgiving, but my mother was as cold as ever. You and your husband are still so unimpressive. It ruins the festive mood. She started with her sarcasm right away. She called us back only to say such things. If she's going to be like this, she shouldn't bother calling. I thought, while fending off her sarcasm, but her barbs continued. We're worried about you. You two live in poverty. We always think you'll come begging for money. My family home is quite wealthy. But since leaving, I've never asked for financial help and have been living off our own earnings with Walt. We manage a decent life and even celebrate their birthdays properly. There's no way we would do that. I immediately responded to her baseless accusation. However, she blurted out, "But you two are still low income, aren't you?" And then shifted her gaze to Walt beside me. "Walt, you're still working at that detective agency, right? How long do you plan to keep doing that shady business? Don't you feel embarrassed?" Indeed, Walt works as a detective, something she always ridicules. She sees detective work as shady and inferior to regular jobs. While Walt was explaining his job to make it understandable for her, Zach chimed in. "Mom, it's pointless to even listen to that. Detective work is shady, something nobody wants to get involved in. It's a low-level job done by people beneath us. The salary must be nothing compared to mine." Flaunting his elitism, Zach looked down on detective work, just like her. That is something we've been hearing since we got married. Walt remained silent, but I felt angry that his job was being completely dismissed. Walt has been my confidant since our student days, so he understands what my family is like. Therefore, he always accompanies me when we have to visit my parents, not wanting to leave me alone. Even though he knows he'll be subjected to unpleasantness, I still feel terribly guilty. This visit, like others, ended up being an unpleasant experience. We resolved to live modestly together, not bothered by my family. Around that time, something wonderful happened. In our 3rd year of marriage, I finally became pregnant. I was overjoyed to be expecting our first child. Considering the way my parents always disparaged me, I felt I couldn't keep my pregnancy a secret from them. So, I visited my family home to announce it. It had been a while since I visited outside of Thanksgiving and Christmas, and my parents, Zach, and his wife Rosie were there. The response to my announcement was unexpected. Upon hearing my news, my mother suddenly raised her voice. "How dare you say such a thing in front of Zach?" I was surprised by her reaction. I hadn't expected congratulations, but this was unexpected. I was puzzled by her reference to Zach, and as I tilted my head in confusion, she revealed a shocking truth. "Zach can't have children, due to Rosie's constitution." How could you be so insensitive with your announcement? I had no idea that they were infertile. Stunned by her unexpected words, I turned to look at the two. Zach looked uncomfortable and resigned. Meanwhile, Rosie was looking down solemnly. You dare have a child before Zach. If it weren't for Rosie, this wouldn't have happened. She sighed dramatically, glancing back and forth between Rosie and me. Observing that, Zach intervened. You know, Rosie feels guilty enough as it is. Don't be too hard on her, Mom. I was a bit surprised to hear he defend Rosie. From my occasional visits, I knew that his attitude towards Rosie was never that kind. You're really kind, Zach. Rosie, if it weren't for being Zach's wife, you'd have been divorced long ago. Hearing Zach's words, our mother glared at Rosie. Indeed, knowing them, they might have divorced Rosie immediately upon learning of her infertility. But perhaps Zach does have some affection for his wife. I pondered that as I watched he calm our mother down. Well, I've made my announcement, so I'll be heading home. The atmosphere had turned to blaming Rosie because of my announcement, so I decided to leave quickly. But then, my mother turned to me and said something unbelievable. The baby you're having, give it to Zach. What? I couldn't help but exclaim in shock at her outrageous suggestion. What does she mean, give my baby to Zach? You can have another child since you're capable of having one. Since Rosie seems unable to. So giving that baby to Zach as an adopted child will bring peace to our family. Peace? What is she talking about? How could they think of taking my baby for him, just because he can't have children? That's absurd and unjustifiable. When I insisted I would never agree to such a thing, my mother retorted, Look, this is our long-awaited first grandchild. I'll let it grow around me. It's only right that we get to raise it. Zach will take over the company, so we will raise the baby. She made such infuriating arguments, planning to take away my unborn child just to ensure a successor for our father's company. She talked about the process of adoption as if she had researched it, but I was too furious to listen. Seeing how irritated I was, Zach added something unbelievable. Well, since Rosie can't have children, it's good for her that you got pregnant at this time. At least you're finally contributing to this family. I couldn't believe it, but Zach seemed to agree with her. Even our father, who usually says nothing, nodded in agreement from behind them. It seemed the whole family was ready to claim my baby as their own. I couldn't believe how casually Zach spoke such terrible words to his own wife, acting as if nothing was wrong. Realizing that talking further was pointless, I decided to leave immediately. They only said, make sure to give us an answer next time you come. And didn't even come out to see me off. Only Rosie, who must have been deeply hurt, silently saw me off. Even after returning home, my anger didn't subside. Far from celebrating my pregnancy, they made an unreasonable and absurd demand. Thinking about the future made me feel gloomy. They would probably keep pushing for adoption after the baby was born. Walt was also shocked when he heard the story from me after returning from work. Even he was at a loss for words. He understands my family, but the situation being beyond belief. A few days later, we had an unexpected visitor at home. What brings you here so suddenly? It's rare to see you alone. It was Rosie. She looked haggard, her skin lacked luster, and her hair was disheveled. As she looked at us, her eyes brimmed with tears. Olivia, I'm so sorry about the other day. She must be referring to when I went to announce my pregnancy. It wasn't her fault though. She seemed to feel guilty about the unreasonable demands made by my family. Then, she began to speak about something unexpected. Actually, I have something I want to talk to you about. What could it be? I invited her in to hear her out. What she revealed was shocking, and my anger surged again. Trying hard to suppress her anger, she calmly told me a significant truth. Walt had been quietly listening to our conversation, but spoke up as our talk wound down, saying, actually, and revealed information to me. It was as astonishing and infuriating as Rosie's confession. Although Rosie had been listening to Walt's story, her teared up again. Having been informed of this significant fact by Walt and Rosie, I made a decision to punish my parents and Zach. I swore to myself to settle past grievances and seek revenge. 3 months later, my belly beginning to show, I visited my family home with Walt. There were my parents, Zach, and Rosie. You've decided to give the baby to Zach, right? My mother asked, without even a greeting. It seemed she could only think of my baby being adopted by Zach. I told you before, that's not going to happen. As I responded, my parents glared at me, as if they couldn't accept it. No matter what you say, we're taking that baby. Stop being so stubborn. My mother appeared infuriated by my resistance. Feeling the same way, Zach and my father just glared at me without stopping her. No matter how much you yell, I will never give the baby away. Instead, I came today to show something to you guys. Is that okay, Rosie? I said, then made eye contact with Rosie. She nodded, still looking into my eyes. Rosie intends to divorce Zach. And the reason is this. I pulled several photos from an envelope I had brought. That was my purpose for coming today.
These are...
Seeing the photos, Zach was speechless. The photos showed Zach kissing another woman and entering a hotel, undeniable evidence of his infidelity. Apparently shocked to have been photographed. He muttered just one sentence.
Who the hell took these photos?
Our parents, standing next to Zach, looked bewildered and alternated their gaze between him and me. They probably had no idea that he was having an affair. It was Walt who took these.
What?
Yes, Walt had taken the photos. Walt had been silently watching that unfold, but began to explain how he came to take the photos. As a detective, he had incidentally seen Zach walking in downtown with an unknown woman while investigating a case. Out of curiosity, he conducted his own investigation and discovered that Zach was having an affair with that woman by pretending to be single. The decisive moment was captured in those photos. Zach seemed to think he had cleverly kept his affair secret. He was dumbfounded and at a loss for words. Adultery is a valid reason for divorce. Make sure you pay Rosie a proper compensation. Amidst the tense atmosphere, Zach spoke. I got stuck with a wife who's so incompetent. It's okay to have a little fun outside, right? Rosie and I were speechless. Instead of apologizing, he blamed Rosie for his infidelity. That's right, you're right. Rosie, it's because you're incompetent. To think you're acting all high and mighty about divorce. Our mother joined in, supporting his retort. They were desperately trying to blame Rosie, probably not wanting to be at a disadvantage themselves. I guess after I left, she must have been treated coldly by this family, just like I was. Thinking about it made me feel terribly sorry for her. Therefore, I decided to confront this family today. To save myself and Rosie, who had been neglected all that time, I pushed them further into a corner by blaming Rosie. Zach, you made fun of Walt, but the investigative skills of a professional detective are extraordinary. As soon as he started investigating, evidence kept piling up. And then, we found out something shocking about your mistress. Saying that, I saw my parents tensing up, wondering what shocking fact would come out next. The woman you're having an affair with seems to be the daughter of a mafia boss. As soon as I revealed it, Zach stiffened as if frozen. He must not have known that. Immediately, my mother screamed.
What? Is that true?
Her beloved son's mistress being the daughter of a mafia boss. Upon knowing the full extent of the shocking truth, she collapsed to the ground, covering her face with both hands. My father also pressed his head with both hands, as if he had heard something terrifying. Zach, you were pretending to be single while dating her, correct? Right, he had hidden his marital status to have an affair with the woman. If she finds out that she's been deceived by a married man, what do you think will happen? What will her parents do when they learn their daughter was tricked by a married man? It would be better to tell them, right? With my threatening words, now clearly realizing the identity of the woman he had been deceiving, Zach started to panic.
No! I didn't know either. I was deceived too.
Our parents, domineering just a moment ago, were now completely confused by this unforeseen revelation. Then, Rosie began to speak in front of the flustered. You didn't just deceive your mistress, did you? With her words, tension returned to the room. Then, she repeated what she had told me during her visit. You are infertile, aren't you? At that moment, Zach's face showed an "oh no" expression. Our parents looked at him in shock. They had blamed Rosie for not being able to have a baby, but the cause was actually Zach himself.
Did you know, Rosie?
That was all he could manage to say. The stunned parents were visibly shaken by the harsh impact. As they struggled to find their next words, Rosie delivered the final blow. "I found it accidentally while cleaning the room." Rosie had stumbled upon his infertility diagnosis, hidden in his desk drawer. He couldn't admit that to his doting parents, so he kept that fact a secret and blamed infertility on Rosie. Believing his words, our parents had blamed Rosie. His protective comments about Rosie when I announced my pregnancy were probably due to his guilt over the issue. Being blamed for not being able to have a baby, I suffered every day. And the talk turned to taking Olivia's child. I was just so sad. Rosie declared that with a calm and unchanged expression. In contrast, my parents had just learned the shocking truth and were in a panic.
"To think Zach will never have a baby, that's just..."
My mother was despairing at the reality of not being able to hold his child. But in the next moment, she turned her hysterical hatred towards him.
"You knew it was your fault, yet you pushed all the blame onto your wife. Did you cheat with other women just because you knew you were infertile? How could my son be so low? Oh dear, why did this happen?"
She vented her frustration at him. Hearing it, he finally spoke and started his pitiful explanation.
"I was shocked to find out I was infertile. I felt guilty for not giving you two a grandchild. When I found out Olivia was pregnant with a boy, it just seemed convenient."
It was a story that made me feel utterly contemptuous. Shaking off my anger, I delivered the final blow to the three. "Your selfish actions hurt Rosie and me. Besides, you have an affair with such a dangerous person. Zach, Mom, and Dad, you all better brace yourselves for what's coming. You guys have hurt so many people, now you'll get what you deserve." Hearing my words, they started apologizing to us, their earlier bravado gone. Where did the momentum go when you asked me to give up my son? I looked at the three of them with disdain, like looking at trash. Beside me, Rosie said nothing and just stared ahead. Her silence spoke volumes about the depth of her sorrow. Zach and my parents were in for tough times ahead. The father of Zach's mistress learned about the affair, and the three of them were summoned and had to apologize repeatedly. Although they managed to break off the affair, Zach was forced to pay a hefty compensation because he had deceived the woman. The amount was staggering, and they learned the hard way the dangers of entanglement with such people. Because of that, my family home soon fell into disarray. My father was forced to resign as company president due to the public scandal. My mother became isolated, seen with disdain by the neighbors, and withdrew into herself. The relationship between my parents became hostile, constantly arguing over Zach. Zach was forced to leave his job after the scandal leaked to his company. As if to add insult to injury, his divorce with Rosie was finalized. Losing his job and having to pay compensation to Rosie, Zach was trapped in a life of relentless work. Around the time Rosie successfully left the family home, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Both the baby and I were in good health, and I savored the joy of welcoming a new life. The happy days for our family of three began. Then, Walt and I decided to cut all ties with my family. I had been torn about severing ties with such parents and brother, but that incident made me realize it was best for my son. Even without them, I have an irreplaceable family now. I've decided to cherish only my precious family from now on.